Siberia, and they came to our country. Uh, the way they travel is also differs a great deal. We have an example like the bar-tailed godwit, which can actually stay aloft and fly at a stretch from their breeding to their wintering grounds. So they can stay aloft for many hours, and it's one long migration flight, whereas the others sometimes have shorter journeys. They would stop over, refuel, much the way we would do when we are traveling. We if we had to go from Kashmir to Kanyakumari, I'm not sure how many of us would be driving throughout without any food or rest or whatever. So many birds do that. Using the climate and the wind patterns, it has also been seen that very often, sometimes some of the vagrant birds who are found on islands, etc., can be pushed there by the wind patterns. So you might see a vagrant sometimes, and especially on the sea coast, there because of the wind, etc., they or different climatic conditions, they might be pushed across to certain areas where they were not seen earlier. Incidentally, in Gujarat, uh, on the coast of Gujarat, the Namakwa dove has been sighted, which was not there. So that's an addition to our bird list of our country. How do they navigate? Yes, that's a very interesting story, and probably merits a separate lecture. But I will not give you a heavy dose. They navigate with a lot of landmarks, the way we do. We remember a landmark. We remember that this was the building. Or they use stars. Now, the navigators of old, the human navigators also depended a great deal on astronomical clues or stars. So do the birds. So, to that extent, probably they're pretty much the way the other animals, including the humans. This is just a map to show you sometimes how, what are some of the interesting journeys that the birds would take. If you see this red line here, this is the route of the Arctic tern, who goes twice a year from the Arctic to the Antarctic and back. And that's when it makes use of the seasonal changes. As you know, that in northern hemisphere, right now we have summer, and in the southern hemisphere it will be freezing cold winter. So they make use of that kind of change in the climates, that they would go to their breeding grounds in summer for breeding and back to the wintering grounds. So this is the route, this long red line, probably one of the longest journeys which any living being takes, is that of the Arctic tern. You also have, for instance, a very interesting phenomenon. If you can see this line which cuts through diagonally through India, starts from Manchuria and goes right up till South Africa. This is the route of the Amur falcon. Amur falcon is another iconic migrant bird, which goes right through, it cuts through India. So it is not only latitude, but it's also longitudinal. Cuts through, crosses the seas, and goes right up to South Africa. And it can be seen sometimes in Bombay. And the return journey is a bit of a loop. It can actually go a little north. It will go up, maybe come via Gujarat, and then cut through. So it's not necessary that the return journey will be through the same route. These are some of the interesting findings that scientists have found. We have the short-toed shearwater, which is which is an American bird. You see this blue line off the west coast of America and the east coast of Asia near Japan, and this is its journey. So it's a sort of zigzag route. Now there are many more, of course, but we'll try to concentrate more on India birds so that it becomes more relevant for us. Now, what are the study of migration patterns? How do we know all this? And over the years, there's been a lot of ringing of birds. That's how we know the journey. For instance, the Amur falcon were actually brutally being attacked in Nagaland. They were coming to Doyang, and a lot of work was done by conservationists. And today, the people who were attacking and killing them in thousands are actually preserving and conserving there. So that's a story of conservation also, and are welcoming the Amur falcon in their midst. The bar-tailed godwit, as we talked about, who does not refuel, but who travels vigorously at one shot. The Arctic tern, who is traveling from the extreme north, the Arctic, to the Antarctic and back. So that's a long journey twice a year. You will see that many birds fly in a V-shaped flight. And this is something that we have learned. This is the principle of aerodynamics, which we have adopted in our fighter pilots. Our fighter pilots have adopted that. Now, this is not a very good picture, I must admit. It was taken with a very old lens when the digital cameras just came in. And this is a picture taken in Kutch of the cranes, the common cranes. And you'll see that they are flying in a V-shaped. So why do they do that? And especially the migratory birds. There's a lot of principle and a lot of science, but very, very briefly, the reason is that this is an example of team leadership. And as my introduction says, I'm also a corporate trainer. So I love this example for corporate training, for team building also, team leadership. The bird in front is the team leader. And because he or she flaps their wings, does the maximum work, the birds at the back actually get that kind of lift. So their power and their energy is saved. It is estimated that about 70% of the energy of the flocks is saved by this means. And that helps them to traverse long distances. It's also protection for the birds. And so the team leader, unlike some of our leaders, don't sit back on a chair and enjoy life. They have to do a lot more work. So because they do a lot more work, they also get tired. So they come back and another bird takes their place when they're tired. So this is a good example of, rotation of leadership. It's not that I've got the chair, mujhe kursi mil gaya, so I stuck to it. Okay, so some nice examples from the world of nature, even for our own lives. And for some learnings out there. So what are some of the types of, migrations? One is, of course, the seasonal. That is during winter and summer, from the wintering grounds to the breeding grounds and back. And of course, because it's latitudinal, the example of the Arctic tern, our own birds.
Can I just interrupt here? Can I just interrupt here for a minute? There is a lag in the audio. Ari, there is a lag in the audio, so maybe there is a network issue. So I would suggest you put off your video. You continue your talking, but put off your video. Maybe the bandwidth issue.
Okay, I'm off.
Thank you. Thank you.
Possible, yeah. In fact, I would request everybody to please put their videos off so that we get more bandwidth.
I think that makes sense.
Seasonal,
thank you.
That is summer, winter. Now, I would also like you all to respond that do we only have birds coming in winter or during other seasons too? Maybe you can put that in the chat box. The latitudinal, that is Arctics to the tropics and back, the high latitudes to the tropics. Then the longitudinal, which is very common in, especially in birds in Europe. Then we have the loop migration, which is something like what the Amur falcon, which we talked about, which comes one way and goes back in another way. And then we have the altitudinal migrants. Now we often feel that, okay, ye pakshi foreign se aaya hai. Actually, it is not so. Many of our birds that we see in the plains of India are actually altitudinal migrants from the Himalayas, from the high altitude, because once snow falls and becomes really cold and food becomes scarce, they would come down to lower altitudes and lower elevations too. So these are some of the types of migrants. So Binda, can you tell me what are the answers in the chat box to these questions?
Yes, now people have been commenting. Yes, there are other seasons too. They can, they come in other seasons also, seasons other than winter. Birds come in other seasons also. Migration in
Okay.
summer too. Doreen says Indian pitta, for instance. So they do come
Right.
in
Yes,
other
Doreen,
seasons.
you would know. So you've given out the answer. Anyway, so yes, the Indian pitta, we have a few summer migrants too. One, as Doreen very correctly says, is the Indian pitta. Then we also have the pied cuckoo or the Jacobin's cuckoo, which is to be seen especially during the monsoon, and it's a harbinger of rainfall. Because when you see a pied-crested cuckoo, or now called the pied cuckoo or the Jacobin's cuckoo, you can be sure that we are going to get a good monsoon. We also have the blue cheek bee-eater, which is very often seen during the summer months. So we do have a few summer migrants too. We also have, depending on where you are located, we also have passage migrants. For instance, a lot of migration takes place from Saurashtra and Kutch, and many of them then disperse across the Indian continent, the Indian subcontinent. So they may be seen in the early part of the migrating season and at the end, and then they disperse. So they are the passage migrants. So yeah, good effort there. And then of course you have some of the altitudinal migrants who actually come down just a few hundred feet, just for the sake of food and getting a wider dispersal. Now this is black the black-tailed godwit, which is also a migrant. When you go to a pond, and we'll cover more of the water birds because they're easier to see, especially for those who are doing birding for the very first time. But seeing forest birds can be a real challenge. Seeing an Indian pitta can be a little bit of a challenge, though not that much because it's a little more open country. But water birds are particularly easier to see. So this is a bird which you can see normally in very shallow water, a large sized bird, and it's easy to spot. Now, many of these birds who come are in non-breeding plumage because remember that we are their wintering grounds. So when they are in breeding, the male especially puts on some beautiful colors, and that's called dimorphism in the birding language, or in the zoology, in the language of zoology. It's dimorphism, which means different morphs. Um, this bird is particularly commonly seen in shallow lakes, in ponds, or at the fringes. It's one of those waders. We talked about the bar-tailed godwit also. The bar-tailed godwit is normally seen on the coastal wetlands, whereas this particular bird would be seen in the inland too, in freshwater lakes. Here's another beauty, and who travels long distances, the common mallard, and this is the male. Many of the females amongst the ducks can be quite a challenge, but then you would have to see the other features. In our birding language, we say the jizz of the bird, the general information of size and shape, not necessarily the color, because sometimes all females might look pretty similar, a dull brown color. So you got to see the shape, the size, the other markings, etc., even some minute markings. Here is a bird which you can see even in the freshwater lakes, inland lakes also, and he has come to be with us during the winter. And another very interesting bird, the northern shoveler, because he comes from northern latitudes. And you see this colorful guy, he's the male, and the rather sober looking lady. Now, you might ask that, okay, why is it that there's dimorphism? And we
Abhi,
say, well,
can you repeat the name of the earlier bird, the one in the earlier slide, the male one?
yeah, that is the common mallard.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, and this is the northern shoveler. You see the beak, and I'll show you the next slide. You can see the
Excuse
beak
me,
clearly.
ma'am.
It shovels. Yes, yes,
And
tell
what
me.
is its name?
This is the northern shoveler.
Okay.
The northern shoveler. Okay, because it has a beak which uses to shovel for food. You'll see a lot of adaptation in beaks and even legs also.
Yes.
These are web feet,
Yes.
especially for water birds, so that they can swim, good for swimming, right? And the beaks are also adapted depending on how they get their food. Now, we were talking about why is it that the poor lady is so sober? And we always think that the female should be more attractive. Actually, the males are supposed to be more magnificent because poor fellows have to do a lot more work. They have to attract the females, they have to show that they are worthy of passing their genes to the next generation. So they have to be able to attract the female. The female is made to be more sober for her own safety so that she merges into the environment and predators don't catch her because she is the person who ultimately would be, procreating, responsible for procreating. So that's why nature has made it such that the female in many species are a lot more sober. I can see the Bhakti Modi's hand is raised. We'll take, please type your questions in the chat box and we'll take them up later.
Yeah, we will
Okay,
just
now
have
this is a
about 10
picture
minutes
of
at the
the.
end.
No.
We will have 10 minutes at the end. So
Yeah.
please let your comments and questions keep coming in the chat box. Okay.
Yeah. Now this is another photograph of the northern shoveler where you can see the beak very, very clearly. How it's a very strong beak used for shoveling and getting its food. So another, interesting bird, which is right now in non-breeding, it would be non-breeding plumage in our area. These are a mixture of the black-headed and the brown-headed gulls. And you'll say that I don't see either a black head or a brown head because those black and brown heads only come during the breeding season. Otherwise, you will see there's a small little dot here. And very often, if you go to some of these bird sanctuaries, the boatman might tell you, oh, Australian gull hair. Now, please understand, we don't have Australian gulls out here. These are breeding in the Himalayas. In fact, I have seen a brown-headed gull in Ladakh and in breeding plumage. When they come down to the plains, they are in non-breeding plumage. The difference between how do you distinguish between a brown-headed and a black-headed? A simple rule of thumb is the brown-headed beak is a more solid beak compared to the black-headed. And they're usually there in huge flocks. You will see in many of the, especially the coastal wetlands or brackish water, they'll be there in huge flocks. Go to Jamnagar's Lakota Lake, and they'll be more or less covering the lake. Okay, this is taken during the evening, the lesser flamingo. Flamingos breed in our country, but then they are also local migrants. So it's not that only long distance migrants come, we have a lot of local migration too. And they breed in Flamingo City in large numbers. And that habitat is being threatened now by a lot of human activity. We need to be really careful of that. This is taken right in the heart of Porbandar city, where there's the Flamingo Sanctuary, an amazing place surrounded by a lot of buildings, a bit of filth also. But this flamingo is a migrant, and you'll see them in Siri also. When you go to the Siri wetlands in Bombay, since many of you are Mumbaikars, and many of the other wetlands, they are very, very common. And of course, very beautiful and very graceful birds. There's a difference between the lesser and the greater flamingo. The lesser flamingo is slightly smaller, but it has more pink in its body, in its feathers, and it has more of a blackish beak, whereas the greater flamingo will have more pink on the upper part of the bill. So that's how you differentiate. Sometimes it's very, very small differences. Now this sort of scary looking fellow is the steppe eagle. There was a time when our local tawny eagle and the steppe eagle were considered one species. But with a lot of studies about migration, etc., they have separated the species. So the steppe eagle comes from the northern latitudes to our country, and during winter, and it's a huge, comparatively much larger, with a lot of variation in its plumage here, whereas our tawny eagle will be more soberly colored, and these are huge raptors. This is another two interesting species taken in the Chambal River in Dholpur in Rajasthan. And you'll see both these species actually breed in Ladakh. In fact, and come to the plains during winter. You will see that, in fact, the scientific name of this species, which is the bar-headed geese, is Anser indicus. And they are widely spread during winter, but during summer, the breeding grounds, they will be going back to their wintering grounds, high altitude. And they're able, these are some of the birds which can fly across the high altitude, the mountains also, including Mount Everest. And down here, you will see another bird, which is also seen in the highlands. That is the ruddy shelduck. I will show you a different picture also of the ruddy shelduck in the next slide. So that you have the ruddy shelduck. How do you distinguish between the male and the female? The male will have a greenish collar around its neck. That's how you know it's a male, and the female not be having it. So that's the differentiation mark as such. Okay, some of the iconic birds. We like to see huge birds. We like to see them in large numbers. So this is the photographs are taken in a small village called Khichan near Fulodi near Jodhpur. And the reason why they flock here is because the local villagers, there's a trust run by the Jain community in Khichan, and they feed them grains daily when they come for their wintering. These are, again, wintering birds called the demoiselle cranes. I repeat, the demoiselle cranes. Beautiful. You can see they have their front is a sort of like, it looks like a black tie, and they are there in huge numbers, and they fly in a V-shaped. And often you will see them just covering the landscape. Again, birds which are not in very deep water, unlike the ducks, but also in shallow water. Sometimes in Saurashtra, you will see them eating peanuts in the Mumfali farms, and they can cause quite a bit of damage to the farmers. But I think we should really take our hats off to our farmers in these regions, because they're very tolerant. They don't kill them, they just shoo them away. But they can cause immense damage to the peanut crop that we have. So here you can see them in large numbers, a little closer. And when they take to flight, they are an equally impressive breed. That's all of them suddenly taking flight. And when they, as you can see, sometimes in large flocks, when they take flight, they all take flight together. So there's a lot of coordination and harmony, especially for birds who have to travel long distances. They are so well adapted to traveling in long distances. Okay, Doreen, that's the Indian pitta. I think I took it with you in Ranthambore. And yes, it's a summer migrant. It's locally called the Naurang because of the multiple colors, a beautiful bird, and usually found in the dry areas. They also come to Saurashtra for breeding. And so in the northern parts, they come during summer in the dry plains. I have also seen this bird in Dandeli and many of the areas south too. So this is an example of, the latitudinal and the local migration. This is one of our visitors from Siberia, a small diminutive bird normally found during the winter. It's called the Siberian stone chat or the common stone chat. And it is normally found near water bodies, but not in water bodies, an insectivorous bird which feeds on insects. So it requires that kind of a habitat where there's enough greenery also, there's good insect life. So you will see that a lot of it is driven. The main reason why birds or any animals do what they do is one is for survival and for procreation of the next generation, to keep the next generation going. So here's an example of the Siberian stone chat. Now this is a bird which is called the black-eared kite. Earlier, it was, you will see a lot of the black kites in our country, and these are resident birds. But there's a population called the black-eared kite.
It got dropped.
Yeah, I think there was some network issue. That's why she just.
So yeah, she's back. Yeah. Okay. You can see she was having some challenges with the network. She should be back. And she's nearly coming to the end of her presentation. And then maybe she'll take the questions. Yeah. Avi, are you back?
Yes, I'm back. I'm again doing screen share.
Yes.
You need to again allow me to do screen share.
Yes, I'll just make you the co-host.
Right.
Yeah, done.
Okay. So here we go again. I'm sorry for that. This is
okay. So in the next 5-7 minutes, we can take 5 minutes, we can take the questions. Yeah, just give her time to share the screen. Are you there, Ravi? Looks like she still has challenge because her audio is gone. So maybe she'll have to log off and log in again.
Binda?
Yeah,
Binda, why? Yeah. I thought while you all are still getting it, together.
So can you, Doreen, can you step in and answer some of the questions?
I may not be able to answer. I will just try and tell you about we attended a camp at Point Calumet where the bird migration study is done. So where bird ringing is done. So we were very lucky to see how birds are caught in a net called mist net. And then, the birds are then ringed with a tag. And that tag tells what day it has been tagged. And then it is released. And then that's how they study bird migration. So a bird which was tagged here, say in Point Calumet, which is in near Chennai, or it's in Tamil Nadu, and this other bird, this particular bird, was found miles away, maybe somewhere in Russia. So that's how they study bird migration.
Okay.
So, so if you ever see a bird with a tag on its leg, please do tell, get in touch with the society there to let them know that this is the bird that you have found. Just a small sharing while you're like, act together. Yeah.
So also the flamingo, when she was talking about Shivri in Mumbai, we have so many other places also.
Yes. Yeah. We have it near Airoli, where there is a mangrove foundation, which is having boat rides into these inlets where you can get to see the flamingos at very close quarters, along with other waders also. Of course, now because of the pandemic, it has stopped, but I'm hoping to go on one. I haven't gone on that boat ride. Although at one time near Chembur, there's a place called Mahul. You could go in a boat and go and watch the flamingos very close. So Sivri is at one end, at the other end is Mahul. So it's the same bay, I used to say. And of
So there
course,
was something near Vashi also.
Yeah, Vashi. So Vashi and Airoli, it is that same sector.
Yeah. Airoli,
Yeah.
that was the Airoli one.
Years back, I remember going to Safale, which is near Virar, and seeing flamingos at Safale. I'm talking about the early 89, 90. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So you have flamingos in different places then, not just Sivri.
So Doreen, Ashit Gandhi wants to know, aren't the tags tracked online? Do they have GPS tracking? You talked about the tagging of the birds. So,
tagging, yes.
Yeah, so aren't they tagged online? Anything like GPS?
I don't think they have that, that device yet. The ones that we saw was about in 2010. I didn't see that that radio, what do you call it? Radio telemetry or radio thing. That is not there. It is
like
only
they have
just
in the
a
forest
tag.
and in this,
You have it for tigers, radio collaring.
Yes,
yeah, you have it for tigers. You have it for some big mammals, but for birds, I haven't seen here.
And from where is the northern shoveler?
Northern shoveler, you find it in many of the wetlands. You would have seen it in the Rann of Kutch, even the Little Rann, Great Rann, Little Rann. Where else? Wetlands. You find it in the wetlands. They're waders, right? So where else did you see? You see it in Ranthambore also.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And
yeah, you can see them in Jodhpur also. Many parts of Jodhpur. All around Jodhpur.
Okay.
So where
Doreen, would you be able to give some information or add something to a question? Like, when the migratory birds are flying, we always see them in a V shape. So
yeah, that's what she said. Yeah, that's what Avi said. That leader from his flight pattern, he creates what, the energy of the waves. The other birds just latch on to that energy. And then after some time, when he gets tired, somebody else from the group takes over as lead.
Right. I know it's used a lot. It's used a lot in the management trainings and all that.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So teamwork. Yeah. So teamwork that counts, right? Yeah. But I wanted her to tell us a little more how artificial light can affect bird migration, because you have tall buildings and you have the lights, and the birds flying are crashing into these buildings and dying. So before they used to call them bird suicide, but it is not bird suicide. The birds are getting affected. Like you have Malshesgar, and what is that called? Those resorts there had lights which would affect them, and they would dash into the the hills over there. And then they said it's best to off the lights because the birds are migrating and they are dying because they're getting disoriented. So these are things that many people don't know about. So I was asking that question: how light
they may be having a major network problem, because her phone is also only ringing and not answering. So maybe it could be there is a power failure or something.
Because even in Mumbai, lights have gone off in my brother's the Kulaba area.
No, it went off in our area also in the afternoon. Yes.
Okay.
So one more question.
Any questions? Let me see.
Yeah, Doreen.
Because I have not prepared
one more question. You talked about the Indian Pita.
Yes.
Indian Pita. Now the name suggests Indian Pita is from India origin. Is it?
Yeah, that's right. Okay, sorry everybody.
Avi's come.
I'm really sorry. Thanks, Doreen. I think you have been sort of
good that you could come on here.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, it is from India.
Yes. So, okay. So, Chirag, you got your answer.
Bird, but it is also what we call the local migration. There's local migration from north to south and back.
Okay. So Avi, now that you're back and we have the last 10 minutes, are there any slides which are important and you want to share,
Okay,
or you
just
want to take some questions?
I'm now skipping to the last slide.
Yeah.
If you can allow me the screen share.
I have allowed you already.
Okay, great. Okay. So just quickly, what are the challenges affecting migration with climate change? Since now with climate change and with warmer atmospheres, especially in the northern latitudes, there's a likelihood that probably fewer birds might not migrate in future. One of the biggest challenges for any living being, whether it is birds, migratory birds, even other wildlife, is the loss of habitat. Thanks to human interference, our desire to have more concrete jungles. So the loss of habitat is one of the biggest challenges. Poaching, of course, is also quite rampant. There used to be a lot of poaching of birds like the Amur falcon, even of the coots. Then a lot of disturbance. We like to go and have picnics out there and create a lot of disturbance, which is not welcome by the birds. Another unintended, human activity is the light pollution, because there are a lot of birds which travel at night and go by the stars, by the astronomical signs. And light pollution, sometimes too much of lighting can actually be quite distracting and disorienting. So this is also a big challenge for the bird life that is migrating. Well, many more birds do not migrate. I think that was the first question. We have in our country, we have something like about 1,300 species of birds so far who have been discovered, and about a little over 300 birds are the migrants. So you can see there's a large number which do not migrate. And that includes many of the birds of prey like the vultures, the crows, the woodpeckers, even the francolins, which are not great flyers, the sunbirds, which are pretty local. However, with the kind of bird ringing that is taking place and new discoveries, it has been found that certain, small populations may migrate. And recently there was a study which showed that the commonly seen house sparrow that we have, a small population which was being had bird rings on them, were actually found far away in Kazakhstan. So a little more observation and probably a little more study is required out there. So why not? Well, changing food preferences. Those who stay back change their food preferences after the monsoon, plenty of insects, etc. Before the monsoon, they would be, depending on berries, seeds, many of them would be caching or storing food. And very often these caches actually, when they are forgotten, they can actually grow and replenish the habitat. This is an example of a bird which does not migrate, the Indian skimmer, which is an endemic bird, and a lot of studies are being done by BNHS on the Indian skimmer. So there are some very beautiful birds of our own country which do not migrate. So how do we protect these birds or protect the bird life, whether it is the migrants or the residents? Remember that very often we get a little kick or a sadistic pleasure in sometimes throwing stones, etc. Please, educate especially the young children that these are also living beings like us. So no harassment. These birds have come after a long journey. Let us see them from a distance. And most importantly is protecting the habitat. If it's a water body or if it's a grassland or a forest, we need to leave that in its pristine condition. Observing the environmental laws in both letter and spirit, something that we are either deliberately or otherwise ignorant of, but we need to see that the environment is protected. We are very fond of all our loud talk, the music, bright clothes, which do not fit into such places when we go to watch birds, and of course to leave the place clean. Now, as citizen scientists, you don't have to be a scientist by training, but if you love the bird life and you like to watch them, maybe you can share your observations on an app called eBird, which can be downloaded. You can upload your photographs, you can upload your observations, and this helps scientists to actually see the kind of dispersal of the bird population and the various species. In fact, a lot of the the publications and the scientific publications are based on the observations of amateurs like you and me. And especially if the bird has a tag or a ring, it would be good if you can get through zooming, get a picture of that tag with the markings or the lettering on it, and share it with the BNHS. And they'll be able to share with you where that bird was tagged and when it was tagged. So this will also go on record and help in scientific studies on bird migration. Of course, being a good role model, I'm a little embarrassed by my own tribe of bird photographers, the way they behave sometimes on the field. It's not about getting that great photograph where you'll get lots of likes and awesomes on Facebook. It's to see that the birds are also protected and made to feel comfortable in the habitat that they are in. Because remember, too much of disturbance means that the birds might stop coming. Very often we have seen areas which have turned into bird sanctuaries, which unfortunately, because of people flocking there in large numbers and creating a nuisance, the number of birds are going down. So I think we need to be mindful about our actions also, small actions, simple actions, but which have a big impact on the bird life. So that brings me to the end, and I'm sure you will enjoy the birding season as it comes. Even this season, the summer that we have, you may see some summer migrants, but also remember to appreciate the local resident birds also, who are such an important part of our habitat. Thank you very much for inviting me
Thank
here. It's
you.
been a pleasure to interact with all. And my
Thank you so
sincere
much, Avi.
apologies for the technical glitches.
That's out of our control, so don't worry about that. Thank you so much for sharing such insightful information about the migratory birds. And let's see if we can take, we don't have much time, just quickly, there are a couple of questions. I can just read them out to you, and if you can answer them. You would like to unshare your screen?
Yep, surely. Okay.
So do sparrows also migrate? Is what was one of the questions.
Okay, I'll quickly take that. We normally thought that sparrows are very resident birds. But as I briefly mentioned, there are some studies recently, thanks to the bird ringing programs which BNHS does, where it has been found that a small population have migrated to Kazakhstan because they had the rings and the bands put in by the BNHS. So it was found that some of our BNHS birds from India have migrated to Kazakhstan. So yes, there are some cases.
Okay. So now northern shoveler, I think you showed the picture. So the Jinal wanted to know what is the color of northern shoveler.
Okay, it's white, green, red for the male, and a rather dullish brown for the female.
And what is the ring, bird ring?
The bird ringing program is carried out in our country by BNHS. These are worldwide programs where many organizations are connected to each other, and they share information also while studying, especially migratory birds. So if you see a bird ring, or if you see something which is attached to the leg of the bird or the neck of the bird, try to see from your binocular, or if you have a big zoom camera, try to see the markings. There might be some alphanumerical markings, or there might be a colored tag. So try to get that photograph and send it to BNHS. And BNHS will get back to you, sharing the details, but it will be a good record also of where this bird was. Some years back, we found a bird ring in a village, in a pond called Vadhwana, 40 kilometers from Baroda. And when this was shared with BNHS, it was found that this bird was, the ring was put in at Pong Dam in Punjab. So you can see the kind of distance. This was the grey lag goose, which was there was ringing going on. Grey lag goose also migrates long distances from Northern Europe into the tropics, including our country, and they travel in large flocks. So watch out for these kind of bird rings or tags. It might be very interesting, and you might come across, be part of some new discoveries.
Thank you very much, Avi, and it's been a great pleasure. And let me tell the audience, you've been very patient, and Avi will be with us again very soon on in the travel diary. She'll be talking. So Doreen and Avi both are like walkie-talkie encyclopedias. So you will see them on this platform again, talking on different topics where they have traveled and about the places that they have seen. Okay. Thank you very much, Avi, and thanks once again.
My pleasure.
Audience for participating in this session. Doreen, thank you so much for stepping in, and love all of you. Take care. Bye-bye, everyone. Don't forget to give your feedback. As I mentioned to you, Getsetup is 100% live learning platform for older adults. And those of you who are new, please spread the word around. Look us up at www.getsetup.in and you will see many more topics. Bye-bye. Good night. Take care.
Good night.